Hi, I'm Nick McCourt, Cybersecurity Engineer for Tier 1 Technology Partners, and today I'm going to take you through security awareness training for 2020. So the first item up is working from home. With today's challenges and with everything that has happened with the pandemic since the beginning of the year 2020, a lot of people have started to migrate to home and work from home. This has brought families together in good ways and bad ways, but a lot of the issues that we're now seeing for businesses and organizations in general is there are now security issues with no longer working from the office. So the idea at this point is to turn your home office into its own little private fortress. And this doesn't require a lot of effort from your part. What it does is require awareness and require implementing a few rules while you're at home. A couple things to remember: you are definitely not alone. You're going to have, if you have children or if you have somebody else that is sharing that space with you, you are going to be sharing different devices on the internet with them as well. And so while some children may be going to school using their own computers or tablets or phones, you're also going to be working from your computer, tablet, or phone. That of course means that there are some things to watch out for, because you're now bringing an organizational computer into the home, or you are remoting into an organizational owned computer from a home computer. And while you're doing that, you have a lot of different people that are also working and doing their own things. So this can cause some issues if other people are downloading potentially malicious programs, and those malicious programs can try to attack your computer as well, even though you are not downloading or using or implementing that program. This can be very, very serious, of course, when you're accessing very important resources to help work with your organization. So you want to be as safe as possible. If you have the ability to create extra SSIDs or Wi-Fi passwords for different forms of Wi-Fi on the house, do that to help separate both yourself and of course your children from anybody else that might actually be working on the network. Also, make sure you have very strong passwords. Most oftentimes you already have a strong password. Usually your router, whether it's Comcast, Verizon, Spectrum, Armstrong, and many, many more, oftentimes those routers actually have a very strong randomized password on the side of the box. That's awesome. If that's what you're using, that's exactly what you need to use. However, if you aren't using that, let's say you change your password to something easier, and you've handed that out to friends and family and visitors before, it may actually be time to go ahead and change that to make sure that you're a little bit more comfortable and safer, of course, with what you're working on. Make sure that you understand that your router is not actually a firewall. It has firewall capabilities, but for the most part, what it does is it provides you internet, okay? Now, there are newer offerings out there now where they're talking about giving you actual defense, giving you all-in-one packages to have antivirus, that sort of thing on your computers and at your home. And if these are things that you're interested in, there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a good thing to have. However, there are also some very important things to consider. Not having a firewall means that at some point somebody can actually try to get in through your router. Okay, so that means that you want to make sure that you're not resetting or changing passwords all the time. You want to make sure that, for example, let's say the space you're living in has some internet problems just from the router, and so what you did was you went out and you bought, say something from Best Buy or Amazon, where it's another router or it's a Wi-Fi extender, tools like that to try to help make it more comfortable for you. Please continue to use those, but remember that you want to make sure that while you're using them securely. So don't use, just the standard passwords that comes with a router that you buy from the store. Make sure that you're changing that. You also want to make sure that when you're changing that, you're not actually using, something that people might actually know or, would think about when they think about you. So, and we'll talk about that here shortly. Remember that your router runs Wi-Fi. So if you plug in directly to it, it's getting internet, and anybody that connects to the Wi-Fi, they are also going to be able to connect to and see devices on that router or that connect to that router. So since there's no real separation between networks and separation between devices, that's where it becomes far more important to make sure that you are staying as safe as possible while you utilize and work with your computer or any other devices that you may have on your network. So personal accounts, of course, they are always an important thing to consider and always an important thing to work with. As far as personal accounts go, we're not just talking about, oh, hey, my bank account. Bank account isn't everything, right? We have on here bank account, credit card, personal loan, student loan, Sweet Frog membership, your grocery discount card. Remember, there are people out there that are looking to get data and information on you. Not you specifically all the time, but remember that if they can find some sort of piece of information on you, they're definitely going to want to use that. They definitely are interested in being able to take that and use it to their advantage. So let's say you signed up for your frozen yogurt place and they wanted your name and your email, and you were supposed to give them a password, and you put in other important information, date of birth, let's say you put in somebody else's date of birth or something like that. They're going to try to grab that and use that if that database becomes compromised. So remember that you have information out there whether you like it or not. On that note, remember that you are working from home. A lot of people get comfortable working from home. Hey, I don't have to drive to and fro from the office. So now, I've got 5 minutes. I'm going to just go ahead and hop on and log into one of my accounts and pay a bill or something like that. It's very important to try to separate anything from your personal life and your work life. You don't want to be paying your bills on your work computer if that's something that you've never done before. You still want to use your personal devices to pay for personal things or buy personal things or search for personal things. Remember that there are some tracking and security layers for your network that will actually see that you're going to places. We're not interested in what you're doing personally. We just want to make sure that the organization that you work for is being taken care of, and that you also are being taken care of while you work for that organization. So it's very important to make sure that you're separating things out and being safe with the devices that connect to the organization's network. So with that, with your personal accounts, with your work accounts, it's always very, very important to try to separate out passwords. You don't want to have the same password for every single account, okay? Now, the reason why we're talking about personal accounts is because a lot of people will still say, hey, I have a really strong password that I created, and I created it for my bank account, and so I use it for my work account. We don't want you to do that. We want you to make sure that your personal account has nothing to do with your business or organizational account, and vice versa. You want to make sure that if one database is hacked and it has your information in it, that a hacker or a threat actor, which is what they're more commonly called nowadays, cannot actually necessarily use information from one database to get into another database. It's got to be separate. It's an isolation tactic to keep you safer. If only one account goes down, and again, any account going down is bad, but if only one account goes down, then that means that you actually have a fighting chance to keep them out of your other accounts. You just have to be hyper alert. So with that being said, of course, we recommend howsecureismypassword.net. It is a very, very colorful and comfortable site to go to, where you can type in passwords that you used before, or passwords that you know that are variations of passwords that you're thinking that you might use. And of course, the important part is if it doesn't turn green when you type in the password, then the password's not strong enough. You want to make sure that you're using things like phrases that are memorable but are longer, because it's harder for a threat actor or a hacker to attack you or get that password. Because if that password is encrypted, they gotta work double, triple, or even quadruple the amount of time to try to hack that specific password. So, you know, a great example for a good password, the chicken didn't cross. It's got a couple of capital letters, it's got a number, it has a question mark at the end. That's a heck of a lot harder at 9 sextillion years to hack. And remember, when I say, hey, it'll take 9 sextillion years, that's just taking a regular computer like what we're using and attempting to grab probably that password in an encrypted form and try to break apart that encryption to actually get your password. So it's going to take a computer a long, long time to do that. In the meantime, a randomized password, which of course is going to be harder for you to remember, which of course is very frustrating, but of course it's also not as long. GRFNZ4Y3 with a pound or hash, depending on how you look at that symbol at the end. It only takes 4 weeks for a regular computer to try to hack that. So remember, most hackers or threat actors don't have normal computers when they go to hack things. They have computers that they spent time and money and invested in building to do very specific things. And if they happen to have a computer that does very specific things like hacking passwords, this 4 weeks actually may be a little bit longer than what it would take for them to hack your password. So it's actually important to keep that in mind. Remember that passwords, and this is very, very important, passwords should not have anything to do with anything that you do or put on social media, okay? So if you're, let's say if you're a Ravens fan, you shouldn't have a password that says I love Ravens, okay? You also shouldn't have a password that says I love the Steelers, right? Because Ravens fans and Steelers, you know, they don't like each other very much. So if you're living in the Baltimore area, a threat actor or hacker will attempt to guess your password by going, you know, I wonder if they're a Ravens fan. Or maybe they put something like, I hate the Pittsburgh Steelers. In the meantime, you know, you want to pick somebody that, you know, normally you wouldn't really have anything to do with, right? So you're a Ravens fan, so let's go ahead and put, you know, I love the Oakland Raiders, right? Now they've moved, right? So it makes it even harder for somebody to guess that password. And for you, you're thinking, gee, how am I ever going to remember that? Well, you start remembering passwords like that, even though they're longer, because it's a phrase, and a phrase is so much easier to remember than something random. Okay, that's something that you really want to focus on, because it does make it easier for you and still keeps you very secure. Finally, everybody always asks me the same thing, okay? And that is, gee, Nick, you're recommending that I have all these passwords. What am I supposed to do with all of them? Well, it's a great question. The most secure thing to do with password is usually to memorize it and never write it down, which of course is something none of us can do, not even me. Another really good way to document your passwords is to write them down on a piece of paper, buy a lockbox, and basically throw away or melt the key, and then even set it up so that it's a trap, so if anybody ever broke into it, water would just wash away all the passwords, which of course, again, I know that doesn't really help us here. So something that's been really good for a lot of people is Password Manager. Okay, and this is a software that you can either purchase or even download for free. And you can use it to store your passwords on, either one device for an unpaid version of it or multiple devices for different ones. So 3, and again, by the way, we're not being paid for any of these are just suggestions, but 3 well-known password managers out there, Dashlane, LastPass, and Zoho. And a great example for Dashlane, for example, it not only will you store your passwords, you will link it through multi-factor authentication to your phone. You only have to memorize like a little PIN code to get into the passwords essentially. So as long as you have your PIN code, nobody else can get in. And then finally, they actually rank your passwords in there. So if you put a password in for an account and Dashlane doesn't like the password, it's gonna say, hey, you might want to change this and make it a little bit more of a secure password and then resave it so that it's not so dangerous out there in the digital world. So our next subject is phishing. For phishing, the year 2020 is an upgrade year. It is a dangerous year. It is a massive phishing year. The idea, of course, behind this is that phishing is one of the easiest and hardest ways to get into an organization at the same time. You want to collect people's information, then you want to send them an email to either respond to click a link, or download a document. And so there are a lot of different security layers to these. So 9 times out of 10 at this point with phishing, most of your people are actually going to send you a link that you're supposed to click on so that you are part of the malicious activity. You're getting an email from, someone, or at least it looks like someone that that comes to you. You click on that link, and when you click on that link, it may redirect you to a web page to log in using your own credentials, for example, your email credentials. It may redirect you somewhere and say, hey, you should probably download this. Or it'll say, hey, I've sent you a document, but in order to get the document, you have to sign in to download it, which of course is another way to kind of pass off your credentials. So here's a great example. This is an email that came from Facebook, or a Facebook lookalike. Somebody created something to spoof Facebook, and what it does is it basically says, hey, we would like you to verify your Facebook account, and if you don't, you're going to get locked out. Well, there are a lot of people that use Facebook still, and so a lot of people may actually be interested in looking at that. Now, a couple things to remember though. This actually went to somebody's professional account. It didn't actually go to their personal account that they're logged into Facebook with. It went to their professional account. Now, this does not help people in marketing where you do have social media that's linked to organizational accounts. So again, you need to be careful. But the most important part about this is that instead of clicking on the link, you just go to Facebook and log in, because Facebook should actually be providing you a notification as well if you actually have issues. So if we click on this Verify Now link, it actually hopefully will do something like this in the web browser if it hasn't been picked up by anything else. And it'll say, hey, it looks like a deceptive site ahead. And you can see at the bottom, instead of going to facebook.com, it actually says on delivery.azurewebsites.net. And so very, very important component to this, you actually want to take a look at the actual link. Even if you've clicked on it, you're like, you know what, I know who this is, or I know where this is coming from. You still want to double check the link. Where does it go in the web browser? Just in case it's been changed from something that you've seen before. So you always want to make sure that you are being just aware of who you're talking to, where you're getting an email from, why you're getting an email from them. The who, what, when, and why, the where, the how, all of those things are very, very important when it comes to communication through email, because there are a lot of people out there that are going to look at spoofing a domain, which again, we have security layers that help spoof the domain, or that help detect spoofing a domain or your domain. But in the meantime, if we misspell it, right? I send you an email from hotmail.com, and I change the O in hotmail to a 0. Not everybody's going to catch that, okay? If you're not looking for that and you just see, hey, I just got an email from Miles Davis at milesdavis@hotmail.com, and you take a look at it, oh, hang on a second, there's a 0 there, not an O. It's not actually from Miles Davis. And who knows? Again, Miles Davis is just a random name at this point that I'm just kind of picking out. But hey, maybe you know Miles Davis. are you supposed to be getting an email from them, or have you just not received an email from them, or is this somebody that you talk to all the time? Remember that a lot of phishing also has to do with somebody else has actually had an account hacked, and their account is now being used to send you something malicious. So you can actually have a real email from a real person, and it has a link in it that says, hey, I just sent this to you. And you're sitting there looking at it and going, well, this is from the right person, but I don't know why they're sending me a OneNote document or a OneDrive document. We've never done that before. That's something that you want to think about and potentially stop right there and forward that over to the security team to take a look at before you do anything. Better to have somebody else that knows how to do it, and somebody else that's actually willing to take the risk to click on the link and see where it goes, and that is equipped to handle that, rather than doing it yourself, because you don't know what you're getting into sometimes. Remember that all of these phishing attempts, they get changed and upgraded and updated on a constant basis, as threat actors are looking for new ways to get into the network by using you. So phishing, again, continuing with phishing, 2020 is an upgrade year. Phishing attempts for all organizations, as well as this one, have skyrocketed. When everybody was sent home, a lot of people kind of think of the stereotypical hacker as somebody that lives in their mom's basement, or they live in a basement somewhere. There are a lot of pizza boxes thrown all over the place, and for the most part, they don't go out, they don't do anything, they just sit on computers. In some cases that's true, but quite honestly, most of them actually have lives. Most of them do work, or maybe even have other jobs. And so what happened with the pandemic is that, hey, guess what, guys, you can't go out. Well, guess what, they had more time now to come up with new, more innovative ways to try to bypass security systems, hack people, spread ransomware, upgrade their phishing emails. And of course, phishing is usually where all those other items start, because if you get information from an email, then usually that gives you a place to start. So in this case, the snapshot, of course, is from our spam filter of from recent months, and you can see over 41,000 emails were allowed in over the course of 30 days. And the spam filter, before it ever got to you, it blocked 12,000 emails. On top of that, you actually already had 660 emails that were quarantined to actually be reviewed. That they could have actually been from a real person, but they were quarantined just in case, because quite honestly, they did look malicious. And they could have been quarantined because they could have been from somebody else's account that was actually hacked. So, hey, I usually get emails from this person. Wait, suddenly I'm not getting emails from them. It's because, hey, they may be blocked by the spam filter because there might be something in their email that's just very different from what you're used to. So again, the most important part about phishing is if you're not 150% sure of what you're looking at, then it is very, very important to make sure that your next step is not to click on a link, it's to forward it to the security team so that they can look at it and we can determine in a sandboxed environment, hey, where does this link go? What does this do? Does this redirect to a login page? Does it attempt to download a virus? Maybe, and again, when I say virus, I don't mean, oh, hey, there's something that just says .virus. It'll be a Word document with a macro enabled functionality to it, where it basically grabs and runs a script on your computer once you open the Word document. So it's something as simple as that you might not think about, but that's where you will actually have the security issues happen once you've clicked on something that you don't know about. Moving on to our next section, ransomware is even bigger this year than it has ever been before. There are a lot of things that happened at the end of 2019 that have basically ushered us into 2020, even before all of the health concerns and all the concerns with industries and organizations around the world. Ransomware was already a big thing. So ransomware, there's a new generation. And so if you're not aware of what ransomware is a type of virus that when downloaded onto your computer, it will encrypt your files, it will encrypt your hard drive, it'll try to encrypt anything else that it can get its hands on, and then it will display a message to you basically saying, hey, your files are encrypted and you need to pay money to get them back. So that being said, the new version of ransomware, it's a little bit different from previous versions of ransomware. One of the cool things about previous versions of ransomware, for those of us that don't want ransomware and really don't expect to get ransomware, is that with state-of-the-art backups, you're usually able to defeat ransomware simply by wiping out a computer and restoring data from a backup drive. That's actually still the case. If you get ransomware, you can actually restore everything even with new versions of ransomware, and you may only lose, minutes to maybe hours worth of work if that should happen. Unfortunately, with the new versions of ransomware, now not only does it encrypt your files and display a warning message to tell you to pay up, it also actually copies those files up into the cloud. When it copies those files up into the cloud, it gives the hackers extra leverage over you to basically say, hey, I don't care whether you have a backup or not. Yes, you're going to restore your systems, which of course is good for your organization. But if you don't pay up, then we're going to release this out on the black market and see what we can get out on the black market for your data and information. So what this latest version, the newest name is called Maze, and that's exactly what it does. Maze will encrypt your files on your computer, on your servers, anywhere it can get to on a network. It will copy everything up into the cloud on it with its own little encrypted keys, and then of course you can restore all of your systems, but you're still going to have to pay the ransom should you get it, because they, without being paid a ransom, they will release your data and information out on the internet. So, ransomware. There are 5 families of ransomware that are very well known. I know it kind of sounds like mafia families, but in some ways this is exactly how they operate. So the 5 families of ransomware are SamSam, Ryuk, PureLocker, Zeppelin, and REvil. And I know that there's another way to pronounce REvil, but unfortunately I am not very good at pronouncing that name, so I'm not even going to try. So the first type of ransomware, SamSam, this is ransomware as a service. So what does that mean? That's the same thing as what you do with your cell phone, right? So you buy your cell phone and then you pay to have cell phone service on a monthly or yearly basis. Or you pay for what you need, as some of the commercials say, but you are essentially paying for a service on a regular basis. This is exactly what SamSam does. You can actually pay other hackers to actually create your ransomware for you so that you can go ahead and release it onto whatever you want. This actually does very specific types of attacks. It does work on remote desktops, remote desktop servers, file transfers, and web servers in order to try to infect the rest of the network. Yes, there are famous exploits. The city of Atlanta is one, the Colorado Department of Transportation, and of course multiple healthcare facilities all over the US as well as all over the world. And the reason why we don't have specific healthcare facilities that have been hit by ransomware is because a lot of healthcare facilities have to observe something called HIPAA compliance, which you may or may not have heard of. But hey, we've had a lot of them get infected. We're not going to necessarily name names because that's not fair to them. It's, and it's just not fair in general because, hey, nobody gets up any morning going, I really hope to download ransomware today while I'm working, for my organization to do other things. So that is SamSam. Ryuk is they're not necessarily a late edition, but they kind of are, started in 2018 and 2019. It's the actual origin is not really known officially, but what we do know is that it will not execute on any computers with primary languages of Russian, Ukrainian, or Belarusian. This is very, very famous for having very, very high ransomware demands. So if you got hit with another version of ransomware and they said, hey, I want $5,000, you might be hit with this one and they say, you know, again, same data, same information. Sorry, we want $25,000. It's the same data, just they want more money for their ransomware. So a couple things that this one is known for. Attackers attempted to run this during Christmas of 2019, which is kind of sad considering the fact that everybody wanted to have a nice holiday. No matter what you follow or anything else, it's nice to have a nice time during that year or that part of the year. And they were running this all over the world in different places, specifically in the United Kingdom, but there were some other places where they attempted to use it as well. Other famous exploits, the water utility companies, a lot of different newspaper companies, specifically the Los Angeles Times. Now, interesting enough, when the Los Angeles Times got hit by this, what they did was they were able to recover from it, but they also created their own news reporting divisions specifically focused on ransomware and other cybersecurity incidents to better heighten what they're doing and, of course, make everybody else aware. PureLocker, this one's been around only since 2019. It does attack both Windows and Linux machines. For those of you that don't know, Linux is another operating system out there in the world. You can get it for free. There are proprietary versions of Linux that are usually used for firewalls and other perimeter defense type devices. And so ransomware hitting Linux machines can be quite troubling if you can find a way into, for example, firewall that's supposed to be protecting you. This usually is installed on already infected machines. So the idea behind this is, hey, I've already downloaded something, the hacker already got into my network, they've now learned a lot of different things about the network, they've gleaned as much information that they can. Once they're done or think that they are done, they actually install and run this to infect the rest of the network to try to get more money out of what they've already gotten. Most famous exploit, people may have heard of IBM. IBM network servers were actually, or IBM enterprise network servers were actually exploited with PureLocker. Zeppelin, which of course, definitely in my opinion, probably the coolest name out there. This is actually a descendant from another type of ransomware called Vegas Locker. It does not operate on computers with primary languages from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, or Kazakhstan. What makes this one very popular? It is configurable. So, you know, it's kind of like taking a Word document and converting it into a PDF, or hey, I wrote everything into Word, but now I need to convert it into a PowerPoint as quickly as possible because I have other things to do. This is kind of your answer for ransomware. You can do a heck of a lot with this for just about anything. Probably the scariest portion of this is that this version of ransomware was actually created by managed security service providers. So basically people that are paid to try to defend and help organizations, they're the ones who actually created this and put this together. Famous exploits, accounting firms, which that's a big serious deal, both in Russia and Eastern Europe. And then of course, this was actually used to target tech firms or managed service providers, just like Tier 1 technology partners, but not actually Tier 1 technology partners, I might add, across the United States. The fifth one, Revil, and again, I really can't pronounce this, the other name for this. This actually emerged early 2019. It's another descendant ransomware virus. A lot of these are descendants from older versions of viruses. This is a descendant from a ransomware known as Grand Crab. This does not operate in Russia or Syria, and it specifically targets Oracle web servers and virtual private network connections. Famous exploits, TravelX. This was another one where they attempted to attack during the holidays. So this was in the United Kingdom during New Year's Eve. And then, of course, 22 towns in Texas in the United States. All were using the same types of systems, and they were all hit with this very specific ransomware. Moving on to our next section. A lot of people when they talk about cybersecurity, it is people are cybersecurity. So Nick, you're a cybersecurity engineer, so that means you do security. Yes and no. There are different things that I do in cybersecurity versus what other people that also work in cybersecurity may do. I tend to be a little bit of a generalist for cybersecurity. That's what Tier 1 likes to do, because of course we want to get our hands on as many things as possible to try to help you as an organization. But there are three major forms in cybersecurity. There is the blue team, the red team, and the purple team. So the blue team, this is the first style of information security practice. These are the guys who they man the walls and attempt to defend the castle. Okay, their job is not necessarily to break into the castle. Their job is not to try to destroy anything in the castle. Their job very specifically is to defend the castle from all invaders as best as they can with what they have in the castle. So this is definitely highlight these IT professionals. This is the least glamorous job. These are the guys that's like, no, I don't, hey, we need you to get a new firewall. Well, I don't want to buy a new firewall. You just make do. You got to come up with something else to build the defenses up, but we're not necessarily going to upgrade your firewall. Okay, so guess what? They go and try to figure out how to help defend even without upgrading the firewall. Or let's say antivirus needs to be installed and somebody is arguing or fighting about antivirus. Remember that antivirus needs to be implemented on every type of machine. I'm an Apple person. Guess what? I have antivirus on my Mac, mostly because Macs can actually carry Windows viruses and not be affected whatsoever. But when they connect to a network, they can basically act as a host and attempt to infect other Windows machines without even really noticing. So that's of course very, very serious. So if you happen to know anybody that does that works with or really loves their Apple devices, Apple is very security conscious, but they're security conscious for their operating system. They don't always necessarily focus on Windows as much, and Apple computers will carry viruses as well. And there are also viruses just simply made for Apple and Linux, as we mentioned with some of the other versions of ransomware in the last module. So antivirus really is an important thing to use. It's not necessarily always the most important thing, but it is a big, big defensive component to help you continue to work in your organization. Blue team, of course, also focuses on NIST, HIPAA, ISO, CARF, etc. These are all compliances. PCI compliance, for example. These are all requirements usually for organizations to function. So, for example, if you need PCI compliance, there is an update in the year 2020 where PCI compliance is going to now make different forms of security layers more mandatory than they did before. So you may need System Information Events Monitoring System, SIM, or SIEM, depending on how you pronounce it. That is very, very important now to people that, hey, I've been PCI compliant for years. I fill out my checklist and everything else. Well, unfortunately, this year you may actually have to look into investing in some extra defenses to make sure that you can continue to be PCI compliant, because a lot of people that thought that they were pretty secure weren't necessarily secure. The next team, red team. Red team really is viewed as the most glamorous of all the security practices. It really is. This is the career that is most popularized in Hollywood. So, Ocean's 11, yeah, they pull the guy out of the van. He's really nervous and everything. In the meantime, they've got cool music playing, as he walks into the server room and he attaches something, and then he walks out and, you know, gets to do his own thing. Italian Job, they've got a hacker in the Italian Job. Yes, the second version for those that are asking. And they're, you know, oh my gosh, he's got such a cool job where he's doing all these things. That's what red teamers are usually glamorized for, or how they're looked at. They are usually viewed as hackers. They're often seen as the bad guys. They are definitely stereotyped as the lone wolf. There's actually different truth to red teamers. Red teamers are usually penetration testers. They are usually engaged by organizations to test their weaknesses. Their job is actually to test and figure out how to get into an organization, and then actually relay the information to the blue teamers and give the blue teamers an opportunity to figure out better ways to defend against that. Red teamers are really big team kind of guys, or people in general, where they're looking at things and they're going, hey, I can see how I can get in this way. Let me tell you about it, and here's what I think you might be able to do as a blue teamer to try to help defend against this moving forward. So that's very much what a red teamer actually does, versus what Hollywood kind of makes them out to be. Finally, purple team, and this actually is my favorite. Purple team is actually a combination of red team and blue team. And for years, purple team, you know, usually kind of laughed at. Well, you know, oh, well, you know, you're purple team. That doesn't really mean much. Purple team just means that, you know, you only know, you know, X, Y, and Z, and you don't actually know how to hack anything, or you don't know actually how to defend anything. Really what they do is they actually cross the borders between both red team and blue team. They understand things on both sides of the wall, so to speak, and they're trying to bring it together. This style of security professional will do both. They will test for weaknesses and they will build up the defenses. And they will try to cooperate and work with both sides just to make sure that, hey, they're building the best defenses for your organization as well as they can. So, what is Tier 1? Well, Tier 1 actually does wear a number of different hats. Your services team generally acts as your blue team. Yes, silly things, right? They're trying to do updates on your computers. Yes, nobody likes doing updates. Well, guess what? Updates on your computers, that's actually just as important. That's very much a blue team exercise. They want to make sure that you are being patched because it helps build up the defenses. They want to do things like they'll be checking for network connectivity, and they'll also be checking to make sure that your firewall is set up correctly. They're going to check your servers. They're going to check your online storage. They're looking at updates for that. You know, if you're syncing up into the cloud for something, they'll be looking to see what they can do on top of, and remember, this is all on top of, hey, my printer's not working. Hey, my mouse isn't working. Hey, I need help with Microsoft Word, or I need help with this other program. It's not working. Can you help me? They're doing all of that. And then, oh, by the way, after they finish helping you, they still got to go back to the drawing board and go, hey, do we have everything set up correctly so that we can actually defend and make sure that everybody is safe? So very important job there. The other thing, of course, that Tier 1 does is we do actually act as purple team. We actually have the capacity to do some red teaming capabilities where we do security assessments, we do some penetration testing. We like to do things like go in and talk to an organization to see if they need vulnerability scanning or endpoint detection and response. And of course, I know I have a couple of different things on the screens here, which is probably pretty hard to read, but you know, if it's in red, it's something that what we're trying to do is defend against. So phishing, threat actors, ransomware, Trojans, vulnerabilities, hackers, spear phishing. In the meantime, in blue and in green, you've got things that we want you to think about, and these are things that we do. Security awareness training, endpoint detection response, or EDR, internal vulnerability scanning, threat hunting, compliance, security assessments. Over here on the green side, we have antivirus, security policies, SIEM, which is System Information Events Monitoring, phishing campaigns, and intrusion detection system. These are all different types of defenses that help your organization stay safe. And of course, these are different types of things that we at Tier 1 actually like to utilize to try to help protect you. Moving on, we want to talk a little bit about those red teamers. Command and control. Command and control is kind of a big thing for many hackers and threat actors. So what we're trying to do, of course, is understand the hacker. The stereotype, again, is that hackers are usually seen as lazy and loners. They are known to or stereotyped as being opportunistic, which is actually true. And then, of course, what I've heard before, hackers are always looking to pick off the weakest in the herd. There is truth to that, but the truth is, hackers, they are very diligent. These are people that not only do they know how to put together a computer or a server or install software, they also know how to build out software or write out scripts to try to hack or get into software. These guys, they do look for low-hanging fruit. That comment, oh, they're looking to pick off the weakest in the herd. Yes and no. Remember, the weakest in the herd doesn't have to necessarily be you as an employee or as a member of your organization. It could be something that, quite honestly, somebody left on in a network and the hacker's able to pick up on that and they're trying to get in using a weak machine or a machine that hasn't been patched or has any updates or a firewall that has an issue with it. Remember, technology does get old. Technology does have problems. That's why you actually use a technology service provider. We're there consistently trying to keep everything running because it's not perfect. And so what a hacker does in turn is they're looking at those things and they're looking to see if it's going to fail. So here you have just what threat actors or hackers do. Hacking in the cloud. The cloud has become far more important than it ever did before. And what's going on now, of course, is that servers can be virtualized in the cloud. You don't have to have a physical server in your office anymore. This means that it is harder to track threat actors, much tougher to try to trace. Oh, hey, somebody's trying to hack me from Arizona. It used to be in previous years that I could trace, okay, well, somebody logged in from this point, and then that point got traced back to this location, and so on and so forth until we actually got to Arizona, kind of thing. Now it's even tougher because, there may be, a data center in Arizona, but that actually doesn't tell us where that person's coming from. So, since you can host a lot of things in the cloud, that means emails can definitely be spoofed up in the cloud, or they can even be spoofed in a serverless environment to attack you. So what does that mean? That means in the year 2020, very early on in February and March, we started seeing a lot of emails, and when we started tracing where those emails were coming from, they weren't actually coming from email servers. They were actually coming from, basically quick setup or mobile phones. In fact, we were able to track one for a very short time until it dropped off the grid. But essentially, somebody had their phone set up to actually run emails, and what they did was they ran it through the cloud and they got everything organized in the phone. They sent all the emails out from their cell phone, and then of course they just turned the phone off afterwards, because once you send out the email, you're not really expecting a response back, and you don't really care to have that response back until later on. You're hoping that people will click on links, which of course will redirect somewhere else. It's just very hard to track people that are doing that. Command and control servers act within a quick deploy, quick destroy mentality. So that phone that I was talking about, it's the same kind of thing. Hey, I'm going to set this up in about 2 hours. I'm going to send out a bunch of emails to a bunch of people. I'm going to shut it down. I'll rebuild it or do something with it tomorrow. In the meantime, I sent out a bunch of emails. I'm hoping for responses. I'm hoping for people to click links, download things, or give their information away. Any questions? If you have any questions, do not hesitate to email us. If you have issues with phishing emails, you have an option. You can email your service team or support at tier1it.com. They will take a look at it, and they of course will forward it on to the security team to take a review. You can also of course send it directly to phishing@tier1it.com. Those emails will come directly to the security team. We will actually take a look at it. Sometimes it takes us a little bit longer to do it depending on what it is, but remember, it's better to be safe than to be sorry with this. It's definitely something to be very, very hyper aware of, especially in today, with all the things that are going out there and all the changes that are being made, not only in this country, but within the world. Thank you so much for joining me for Security Awareness Training. Again, I'm Nick McCourt, Cybersecurity Engineer for Tier 1 Technology Partners. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And again, any questions, email us or give us a call. Thanks.